Moving Through Life. Part 12. Stowed Away Promises and Our Future. No! You can't make me! Shay began storming away from her gathered family, something she would have thought was unthinkable just a few short months ago.
Shay, this is about safety for you and for the whole family. Don't you walk away from this young lady, said her father sternly.
The brothers had returned, looking pale and shaken from their time outside of the walls and from their little conversation, as they so called it, with Todd. They confessed everything from Slate's initial observation of Shay going to see Todd, as well as the mishap and the agreement Todd proposed to Slate. Their parents were displeased that the boys acted without consulting them about speaking with the human, Todd, but seemed more forgiving when they heard that the human saw reason and seemed to promise to leave them alone, especially Shay. To them, there seemed to be just enough evidence to clear Todd of any immediate wrongdoing, but not enough for further interaction. Shay, on the other hand, couldn't believe her brothers went to go see Todd without her and, much to her dismay, made a deal with Todd that Todd wouldn't speak with her without permission from her parents. The young teenage borrower had enough of being treated like a child when she was the one who made first contact and dared to speak to Todd first. Her ears and cheeks were burning, fuming with frustration and anger. Shay was almost to the door to the hallway when Bo stepped between them.
Shay, think about this for 2 seconds,
he said, using the same sternness that was in her father's voice. I have, she said, her constricting throat having a hard time mustering the words. This wasn't just frustration coursing through her. This was disappointment, utter betrayal. I've been thinking about it. I've known him the longest. I've talked with him for more than a minute. He's not going to hurt me, and he's not going to tell anyone. What can't you understand about that?
It's not about that, Shay,
said Icon, piping up for the first time in a while. The youngest of the brothers knew what he saw happen with his brother. In a matter of seconds, Slate went from standing on his own on the dresser to being in the human's pocket. Slate could have been seen by the other human that fast. Slate could have been hurt that fast. And there was nothing any of them could do. I don't think he would do anything on purpose. I think we can agree on that point. But he could definitely do something on accident.
He's agreed to leave us alone and not tell his family about us, so we don't have to immigrate during winter, added Bo. On top of that, he said he doesn't want to make you choose between family and your friendship, which is why he agreed to our terms.
It's not fair that you decided this without me, argued Shay. Shay, sweetheart, humans and borrowers aren't meant to live together like that. It's just not how things are done. Your brothers are right. Even if he didn't mean to, he could still hurt you, emphasized her mother.
We're fortunate enough, added her father, that he agreed without asking for anything in exchange.
Shay balled her hands into fists. She could have punched through the wall if she wanted to, but thought better of it. Yes, her family had valid points. But this was Todd. He had been nothing but kind and careful. All of that time spent creating inventions and building felt wasted now. Shay had so many more ideas, and the person who could help her make those ideas come to life was Todd. He knew so much, and she had learned so much. It wasn't fair. Still, she had to try. "So, can I go see him?" asked Shay. Her question went unanswered in that painful silence, just long enough for her to realize what the answer would be. "Shay, that's not a good idea right now," said her father. Shay was shaking. She was so frustrated. "Why? Why isn't it a good idea?" she asked, voice raised to a near shout. "Shay, he's busy packing right now," said Slate. Shay's eyes widened. Was it the end of the break already? Packing only meant one thing. He was going back to his apartment. She had to think fast. "All the more reason for you to say yes," pleaded Shay. "I want to make sure I say goodbye to him." "You'll see him again when things are a little less hectic," said her mother. "For now, it would probably be best if you didn't go see him." Shay felt her insides plummet as her heart pounded hollowly in her chest. No, they didn't understand. They couldn't understand. They would always see Todd as just another human despite everything he had done to show he was on her side. Tears flowed over her cheeks as she spun around and ran into her room. She could hear her parents and brothers calling after her, but there were too many emotions ringing in her ears for her to tell what they were saying. Shay hated that she was at odds with her family. What they said made sense, yes. At the same time, they weren't listening to her. She wanted to talk to Todd. She wanted to stay with Todd and keep living in the apartment making things. At the very least, she wanted to thank him again and tell him goodbye, that they'd see each other again soon. The borrower teen spent the next span of time crying, wishing she could vent to her human friend. Her parents tapped on the door and once again expressed their statements. Her brothers unapologetically wished her good night before going to bed. As Shay lay in her bed wishing she could talk to Todd, a dangerous thought crossed her mind. It was obvious and would undoubtedly be disapproved of by her parents and brothers. They would be hurt, but at that moment, she didn't really care. They hurt her after all. She knew what she needed to do. So, quietly, she slipped out of her bed and began her work. Todd had a hard time sleeping that night. After the rough conversation with Shay's brother and the deal he made, he didn't feel like sleeping. Todd wanted to explain himself to Shay, or, at the very least, tell her goodbye before he had to leave. He wasn't sure if she was going to be allowed to say anything to him. It was depressing, but he had to trust that Shay's family would see the effort and let him speak in the future. Eventually, he rolled over and was able to drift off to sleep, that hollow feeling still in his chest. Early in the morning, Todd woke up and got ready. Habit made him hesitate before he put his feet on the floor and headed off to brush his teeth. There was a part of him, bigger than he expected, that was saddened that Shay hadn't come the night before, but he understood. He even suspected that his family would be the same way if things were reversed. He pulled on his clothes and shuffled off to the kitchen, where his sleepy siblings and parents were eating breakfast. They talked for a while before Todd had to leave. His mother, loving as always, was teary-eyed as she kissed him on the cheek. His siblings seemed excited to get the extra room back for games and storage, but also indicated they would be coming to visit him while they were in town for some tournaments they had won. With a final nod to his father, he heaved his bags onto his shoulders and headed out to the car. Just before flicking off the light, Todd looked back at his now partially empty room. "Bye, Shay," he muttered. He wasn't sure if she was there, but he wanted to make sure he at least threw it out there if her brothers were listening in. Todd placed his things into the trunk and waved goodbye to his family before starting the engine and heading out down the road. He had just gotten onto the main road and partway down the hill when he suddenly couldn't remember if he packed his laptop charger. It was expensive and he'd need it as soon as he got back. It was a drag, but that little paranoid part of him needed to know if he remembered it. I remembered it. Of course I remembered it. Why wouldn't I have grabbed it? Curses. Todd pulled off at the bottom of the road, popped the trunk, and began rummaging through his bag to make sure he had it. Sure enough, there it was, sitting right on top. Todd rolled his eyes at himself for stopping the car and partially shoved the backpack back into the trunk when he heard something. It was muffled, but distinct. Wolf! Todd's heart rapidly increased in pace as he gingerly pulled the backpack back out of the trunk and stared at it. He practically held his breath as he watched one of the pockets shift subtly. No way. Todd's eyes widened as he reached for the zipper and yanked the side open. The sensations he felt were an odd mixture of elation and happiness, along with disbelief and dread. It was Shay. The minuscule girl had managed to wedge herself in between the chargers to keep herself from getting crushed. Although, instead of her simple shirt and satchel, she was dressed more warmly and had shoved what looked like a cotton ball-sized bag just above the charger. Shay? Todd made direct eye contact with the small girl, who smiled broadly but bashfully. She knew she had been caught. Hey, Todd. She looked at the bag before wiggling further between the chargers. I'm ready to go. Todd couldn't believe what he was seeing. He suspected the little girl was tenacious, but this was a whole new level of determination. One look, and Todd knew exactly what was going on. He quickly glanced around to make sure none of his neighbors could see before he reached down and placed his hand by Shay. Shay, what do you think you're doing? He asked, his tone indicating he already knew. Shay, seemingly embarrassed, slung her bag over her shoulder before climbing onto his hand. Todd had to help by curling his fingers around her slightly and tugging her free from the backpack's clutches before he shoved his pack back into the trunk and retreated to the driver's seat. Well, he prompted again after shutting the door. Shay, completely exposed on his palm, wrung her hands around the strap of her bag. I'm coming with you, she said firmly. Todd knew it. He reached up with his opposite hand and rubbed his eyes slowly and methodically. Shay. I didn't think you'd find me so soon. I thought it would be like when your family left, and you'd be too far away to turn back, and so I would just get to stay with you until my family realized what happened, and then they would know I was serious and that... Shay. Todd's second interruption silenced the small girl whose lips now began to quiver at seeing Todd's reaction. The two made eye contact, and soon after, Shay's eyes began to water. They weren't being fair to you, she sniffed. They said I couldn't talk to you anymore without permission,
and wouldn't let me say goodbye, and I want to live with you. I don't want you to be all alone. You're my friend, Todd. Don't you want me to come with you?
Todd reached up and brushed his finger against Shay's shoulder, and she immediately leaned into the touch. He needed to be diplomatic. Shay, of course I want you to come with me. I wasn't looking forward to being completely on my own, and you being there made every day great. But this isn't the way to do it, said Todd. Shay's eyes began to water more. It's going to be lonely. More than anything, I want you to come with me. I love our movie nights and quiet time doing homework. Goodness knows I won't know what to buy or what to make for dinner without your help. Todd got a sniffly giggle from Shay on that last bit. He smiled reassuringly before continuing. All the same, he said softly, this isn't how we get what we want. Shay's features hardened as she gave him a pointed stare.
You agree with my parents?
She asked. I can see where they're coming from. They don't know me and want to protect you. Naturally, that means they don't want me talking to you. My parents probably would be the same way if we were switched, if I'm being honest, stated Todd.
Yeah, but they're completely ignoring the fact that we've been doing this for months. They don't know you. They should trust me when I say I know you and trust you.
Todd could tell Shay was getting defensive. And you think running away will make things better for you and me? Do you think they'll be more willing to let us talk and hang out? What if they think I've taken you, stole you away? What then? Asked Todd. Shay suddenly looked very alarmed.
I'd tell them I'm good on my own,
she answered quickly. Okay, so that means that you either ran away because you don't care for their opinion and hurt them willingly, or, on the other hand, I've tricked you into doing what I want. Either way, I don't think they would let us talk it out or convince them if I keep going, said Todd. Shay, feeling completely crushed, knew Todd was right. She hated to admit she was wrong, but it was becoming more and more obvious Todd wasn't going to go through with bringing her along.
It's just...
She stammered in between holding back sobs.
I'll miss you. You're my friend. It's just not fair.
Todd curled his fingers and rubbed his thumb along Shay's arm as she continued to sniffle and shake. I know, and I agree. I don't think it's fair. But that's how it works sometimes, encouraged Todd. And I won't be gone for very long this time. I'll be back next month, which is no time at all, yeah? Shay wasn't sure how to respond, and instead gave a vague shrug. Todd forced a smile in the corner of his mouth as he gently began poking and prodding Shay in her ticklish spots. Come on, none of that sniffling. Can I get a smile? I know you've got one in there somewhere. It didn't take too much more for a partial smile to curl onto Shay's face as she attempted to grab the finger that was far too big for her to stop. Finally, Shay threw off her bag and simply wrapped her entire body around the prodding digit. Ah, there we go. That's better, smiled Todd. He brushed Shay's back a few more times as her breathing calmed before starting the car once again. Now, hopefully, they haven't noticed you're gone yet.
Todd had no such luck. Shay's family had been frantically searching for their daughter for the past few hours. They had come to the same conclusion. She was gone. Where? Most likely with the human who, undoubtedly, was either on the other side of the world by now, or had simply decided to keep her. It was a long shot, but they all decided to go and check the human's room just in case. The borrower family hurried along the halls until they reached the dresser. They had just made it when they heard the sound of Todd's voice in the main entrance. The brothers waited in the shadows as Todd came into the room and crouched by the dresser. "Come on, Shay," he was saying quietly. "They'll try to barge in here any second."
Todd?
Yeah?
Thank you. I shouldn't have tried to sneak, and...
It's okay. Don't worry about me, okay? I hope they listen, and who knows? Maybe I'll get to see you when I come back, yeah? Hearing this conversation between the two was interesting, and, for just a brief moment, made the brothers debate whether they wanted to confront the human or retreat back into the walls. They had time to do neither, as they watched Todd's hand lower, with none other than their little sister perched in the middle of his palm.
I'll miss you, Todd. You have to be good, okay?
Instructed Shay. Todd laughed slightly. I'll miss you too, Shay. I'll be good. Promise. You be good too, yeah? And I'll make sure to see you soon.
Promise?
Asked Shay. Promise. The family watched Shay lean forward and lay against Todd's hand, sprawled out as big as she could be, as if she were trying to hug him, before sliding off and looking up at the human. Todd started to stand just as Shay spun around and saw her family standing there, watching the whole encounter. She gasped and took a few steps back, to which Todd froze. What? Are you okay? Slade, having been seen before, stalked forward toward his sister.
Slade, no, look, listen, it was my fault. Todd didn't know.
Shay continued to stammer as Slade gave her a harsh look and then turned his eyes to Todd. "Did you try and take her?" demanded Slade. At this point, Bo and Icon stepped forward, shivers running down their spines at seeing the human, and walked toward their sister. "No, I didn't try to take Shay," stated Todd calmly, despite seeing two other small people come out from under his dresser toward Shay. "Though it is my fault. I should have given you a message to take back to Shay."
Todd!
"No, Shay. I should have passed along the message. It's my fault. Don't take anything out on her," said Todd, trying to be as persuasive as he could. Slade stared at Todd, as did the other brothers, for a short time before Bo spoke up. "I believe that," he said stiffly. "Shane, were you just going to leave and not tell anyone?"
You weren't listening to me,
argued Shay, taking a more bashful and embarrassed tone rather than combative.
I thought if I went with Todd and came back okay, that you'd believe me.
Do you know how reckless that was? Do you know what could have happened? Asked Icon.
Yeah, but it didn't. You know why? Because Todd wouldn't let anything happen to me. Just like you. Any of you. He didn't want me to get in trouble and came back as soon as he could to make sure I was safe. He could have kept going, but didn't. He's a good person and put what you wanted over what he wanted. Doesn't that mean anything?
Shay's words stung, but ran true. And they, unfortunately,
see it. I tried to leave because I thought you weren't listening to me. I thought by leaving that it would prove Todd wouldn't hurt me, and that everything would be okay. And I was right. Todd did. He did the right thing. He brought me back.
Bo bit his lip and stared up at the human. We need to be getting back. Shay, shoulders slumped, knew she was going to be in for the talk of her life. But as she started to walk away, Bo turned back to Todd and held up a finger. You wait here, he said sternly. Todd, just as surprised as Shay, gave a slow nod. Sure. Shay followed her brothers back under the dresser and into the walls until they were just out of earshot. They turned around in sync and glared at their younger sister.
What were you thinking, Shay?
Growled Icon.
You could have been hurt or worse.
Icon is right. Was your grand plan just to sneak out and live with Todd the human? Demanded Slade.
I told you that he was good. I thought you weren't listening to me. I wanted to go back and stay with him. But the rule
was meant for your protection. For all of our protection, argued Slade.
And I told you that Todd wouldn't hurt me and that he'd protect me,
bantered Shay. Shay, said Bo quietly, does living with that human really mean more than living with your own family? The question stunned Shay. She hadn't quite thought of it like that, choosing a favorite. In reality, she wanted both. Shay wanted to live with Todd and come home to her family. However, she didn't think about if she could only have one of the two. She hadn't thought about only being able to choose one or the other. Her mind was racing. What could she say?
I love my family. And Todd is my friend. He was all I had. Just wish you'd give him a chance.
Give him a chance? With her little sister? Interjected Slate, to which Bo raised a hand. He really means that much to you? Asked Bo. Shay bit her lip and nodded. She knew it hurt. She didn't want to admit it, but she wouldn't deny it. She did care for Todd. A lot. Not just because he helped her, but because of their shared experiences. They were friends. In fact, Todd was Shay's only friend. Sure, she had her brothers, but it wasn't the same, and that gave her even more reason to want to hang on to Todd. Bo sighed. His young sister could be reckless, but she also had a keen intuition. Shay knew the borrower way, but was willing to go to a human for help and even stay with him. The young teen had even snuck out because this was what she wanted. She had lived with this human for a long time, and nothing had happened. It didn't mean nothing could happen. Anything could go wrong. Still, she knew him better than they did. He didn't agree with it. He didn't like it one bit. Still, he knew his sister. Fine, he said softly. The other three siblings looked at their oldest brother in disbelief.
What?
Asked Icon in a demanding tone.
You can't be serious.
If we don't let her, she'll just resent us forever because we stopped her. Or she'll try again. We were lucky this time, and she wasn't hurt while she tried to leave. explained Bo. I don't like it, and I really don't like him. However, he did the right thing bringing you home, which has to mean something. Shay was speechless. She didn't know if her brother was playing a trick or if it was a test. She didn't know if he was being sincere. All the young borrower knew was she was completely and utterly torn. Her already tired eyes threatened to begin crying again. Bo, we can't just let her leave, argued Slade. What about Mom and Dad? I didn't say we were just going to let her leave, replied Bo. Shay stiffened as she listened to her brothers. We are going to let her say goodbye to Todd. Then we are going to take her home and let her think about everything. After she's been reprimanded, which I'm sure she will be, perhaps we can convince Mom and Dad to let her go and live with Todd for a time. Supervised time. Supervised? Asked Icon. Yes, I'm going with her. It's that or we let her go stay with Todd, and one or all of us go with her. We could set up a residence there in the walls. Shay said there weren't any other borrowers there. Maybe we can be the first, replied Bo. The siblings were completely stunned by Bo's proposal. None more than Shay. Then, in a rush, she ran up and threw her arms around her oldest brother. Thank you, Bo, she said with a choked sob of happiness. Bo hugged his younger sister tightly while maintaining his stern tone. You realize Mom and Dad will have to approve of this, right? He asked. Shay nodded as she pulled away and looked into her eldest brother's eyes. Fine. Now, go tell that human goodbye. And that maybe, you'll see him again soon. Shay couldn't run back through the wall fast enough. Slade and Icon both turned to their older brother. What was that about? Are you serious? Asked Icon. Bo, feeling twisted and unsettled, nodded. I am serious, but think about it. If we go with her, she can't do anything too crazy. We'll keep tabs and make sure she's keeping to the borrower way of things. She'll be safe, responded Bo. Besides, do you really think we can tell her no now? We tried, and she almost succeeded in running away. This way, she'll have a minute to think about everything, and when the time comes, we can make a better decision. Meanwhile, Shay had run out into Todd's room. Todd had stayed put, just like Shay's brother said, and smiled instantly the moment he saw her emerge from the walls. Hey, is everything okay? Asked Todd quietly, eyes flicking up to the door to make sure his family wasn't listening in. Yeah, said Shay. It's good. I'm definitely in trouble, but Bo, that's my oldest brother, said that he would try and convince my parents to let me come and stay next time. Todd smiled gratefully, elated and relieved at the news. That's great, he said. Then I guess I'll see you soon. It's a deal, echoed Shay. Promise? Promise. Shay ran over and threw herself into Todd's hand, hugging him as hard as she could before getting up and looking him in the eyes. Thank you, Todd, for being there. With that, Shay wiped her eyes one last time and headed off for the wall. Thank you for being there for me too, Shay. Todd watched as the small girl vanished under the dresser, and then she was gone. Todd listened for a few moments longer before giving a brief nod, standing up, and heading back outside and to the road. This wasn't goodbye. They would see each other again, and hopefully they wouldn't need another goodbye for a long time. The eldest borrower was right. Shay was reprimanded. There was a mixed relief when she came home, as well as frustration and confusion. It would take her the next 2 weeks to regain the relative trust she lost when she attempted to run away with Todd. Still, her parents agreed tentatively to the terms. They also insisted, to Shay's surprise, that they meet Todd to better evaluate the human's intentions. So, when the next holiday came, they were ready for Todd's arrival. The family met with him late one night after Todd's family had gone to bed for the evening. They outlined everything they expected from the human, to which he happily agreed. Turns out, Todd didn't realize how lonely he would be while away at his apartment. Though it was only a month, he missed Shay terribly and intended to do whatever he could to make sure she and her family felt safe. What were friends for, after all? So, that holiday, as a trial run, Bo and Icon accompanied Shay and Todd back to the apartment. The adjustment was odd at first. While Shay easily slipped back into old habits around Todd, the brothers were still keen on avoiding being seen by the human and stayed primarily in the walls, setting up their future home. It wasn't until Shay and Todd came up with the clever designs to add to their home away from home that Todd didn't seem, in Bo's words, so bad for a human. Their exchange program continued for months to come, some of the holiday breaks lasting longer and longer. While Shay loved going home, each time she elected to go with Todd. She knew she wouldn't be who she was without her human half, and that the pair, together, was unstoppable, like it was always meant to be.